Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Friday the 26th of April 2019. And tonight's topic, New York Bit License and Bitfinex. We're going to talk about Bitfinex and the recent charges from the New York Attorney General over its dealings in Tether. We have some unique insight into what I think is happening in that particular story. Also, TDAmeritrade, Fidelity, and eTrade crypto trading platforms are set to launch. We're going to cover that. Also, we have some news on the 2020 presidential election, and we have some news out of the Bernie Sanders camp, some economic news. And I think Bernie will be joining us later on in the program for that segment. Also, U.S. GDP for the first quarter came in at a fairly stunning 3.2%. We also have news on Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, and we have news on Donald Trump and his recent pronouncements. He is now going public and calling everything that's happened to him in the past couple of years and also during the campaign as an attempted coup. All right, so welcome Smaulgld mug stackers and game changers. Let's get into the stories of the day. First, let's start with the gold and silver. Gold and silver actually had a good day today. Silver managed to recapture we'll start with silver because they did recapture the $15 mark and then just couldn't hold on to it and then actually did hold on to it. And right now, oh, that's the wrong number. It actually did hold on to it. It is at $15.10 as we speak. I showed you the price from the 22nd of April, but we're going to show you now the price from the 26th. It's a much better looking chart. And here she is, the price of silver, putting in a good day today, up 12 cents, as I mentioned, up to 15.05, and in the aftermarket up to 15.10. And that'll be it for silver until Sunday. So silver recapturing the $15 handle, up 0.83%. Gold had a decent day as well today. Gold rising about 0.7%, up nearly $9. Didn't recapture the $1,300 mark, closed at $1,285, and that's where it closed in the after hour as well. And what did that do to the unsustainable, out-of-whack gold-silver ratio? Well, it made it go down a little bit, still above 85-1, but it had been as high as 85.71. Got down to the low, almost 85-1. It closed at 85.16-1. In other gold news, Russian gold reserves, you know the story. Central banks are buying gold. That is all I need to know. And that Russia is buying gold hand over fist because they know what's coming. And as we said many times in this program, Russia is buying gold because A, they're under sanctions, B, they do very little trade with the United States, and they're essentially at a standstill with the United States, and it doesn't make sense for them to hold U.S. treasuries as a reserve, especially when they have gold in their backyard, and gold is the best currency there is out there, according to Alan Greenspan. He says it's even better than the dollar. And generally, gold over the past 50 years has outperformed the dollar, for sure. There's some years it doesn't, but overall, you really can't go wrong holding gold as a reserve asset. And Russia's central banker, I can't pronounce her name, Elvira something or other, she says that the reason they're buying gold is a diversification play. Now, of course, everyone's going to say they're lying, that there's some kind of grand scheme to accumulate gold because they're going to do a gold-backed ruble or some other nonsense, or they know what's coming. There's the reset. They're preparing for the collapse. I don't think so. I think I take a lot of these statements at face value. It makes sense for Russia to buy gold. They have the third largest gold mining production in the world. Why not add gold? Especially who even knows what price they pay for that gold that comes out of their domestic mines. But interesting to see a statement directly from the central bank. And of course, the conspiracy theorists among us will say, well, now we have the official denial. So now it means that, of course, Russia is planning a gold-backed ruble and they're preparing for the collapse. Okay, if you want to hear those types of stories, go to other channels. I try to give you realistic analysis, and that's why you guys are here, I'm sure. That's why there's few of you too, but that's how it works. Okay, now in the market today, though, we did have that GDP number, and U.S. GDP grew by 3.2%. That was versus 2.1% expectations. So that will probably help boost Donald Trump's candidacy for 2020. I heard today earlier that if a president goes into re-election and the economy is growing at 3%, he's pretty much a shoo-in. I don't know what he could do to lose that. But remember that Trump has been working on trying to recreate the Fed. He's basically gotten fed up with Powell. He's actually, through himself and surrogates, tweeting and criticizing Powell. I think he's actually convinced the Fed to stop raising rates, and they have officially, in their pronouncements now, have talked about only perhaps raising rates once in 2020, and which effectively means that they have slowed the idea of rate normalization, and indeed they're actually pushing for rate cuts. Now, of course, the 3.2% GDP print today cuts both ways, because if the economy really is growing at that rate, that gives the Fed leeway, especially if there's no inflation according to the official numbers, that they should be raising rates. But it seems like there's been enough pressure put on the Fed that they seem to be backing away from that and taking that classic look and wait and see stance. Now, Herman Cocaine the other day has backed out of asking Donald Trump to keep him in mind for a position on the Federal Reserve Board, so that position will not be filled by Herman Cain. And Herman Cain was a gold standard proponent. He actually wrote an editorial suggesting as such, and back in the New York Times, I think back in 2012. Trump's second pick, who is a fan not of the gold standard, but a commodity-backed standard, he's had some issues with supposedly with his taxes, with his alimony, a bunch of personal issues. I'm not sure if those issues would be enough to scuttle his candidacy, but he's now saying that he'll withdraw his candidacy if it becomes a political liability. So it may mean that Trump will have to nominate two other individuals if Moore actually decides to back down. And they'll back down if they do a preliminary vote count and realize that he won't get confirmed. Fed is talking about, this was before today's GDP print, but this was yesterday, so sliding U.S. inflation may provoke Fed rate cut later this year. Meaning if you don't have inflation, then the good news is even though you have the 3.2% GDP and it looks like the economy is heating up, if it's heating up without their official inflation numbers and they want to get that inflation number back to 2%, well, then they can cut rates to try to provoke that. And that's something I predicted a while back that when they were talking about more rate hikes this year, I actually said rate cut this fall. And the reason I say that is political. It's not because I believe in all this economic justification that they give, but that because it is political. And if you do a rate cut this fall, that rate cut coupled with what looks like the momentum that the economy has at the moment will give you a follow-through such that when you reach September, October, November 2020, the economy would be doing well, and that rate cut will have kicked in by then. So that's why I think they'll do it. Here's her name. It's, well, we don't have her name, but that's her. That is Elvira, whatever, Lafilikova. I'm not sure how you pronounce her name, but she's the one who says that they're not aiding gold for any particular reason other than diversification, which I do take her on face value. But she's also saying central banks must retain independence. She's not saying central banks must be buying gold. That is all you need to know. Interesting that she's saying that. Now, look at their key interest rates at 7.75%. This woman seems to be a pretty good steward of the Russian central bank. They do have some inflation in Russia, but they've managed to manipulate their interest rates to combat inflation. They've managed to, in spite of sanctions and a declining economy that obviously is hit by sanctions, to grow their international foreign reserves from about $370 billion in January 2016 to about almost $500 billion, $500 billion as of March 2019, while also diversifying away from U.S. Treasuries and adding some gold. Trump weighed in on the U.S. GDP numbers, and he said, just out, real GDP growth for the first quarter grew 3.2% annual rate. This is far above expectations. Importantly, inflation very low, which means, hey, we can cut rates. And that's what I put here at the top. So cut rates. He's definitely making the pitch. All presidents want the Fed to be on their side when it comes to re-election. I often mention the book, The Secret Diary of Arthur Burns, who was the Federal Reserve Chair from 1969 to 1974 under Richard Nixon. And in his book, The Secret Diary, Inside the Nixon Administration, he talks about the pressure that Richard Nixon would place on him in 1971, knowing that he wanted re-election in 1972. And in a sense, he wanted Burns not to be Mr. Independent Banker and do what's right for the economy, but to actually go ahead and keep rates low so that they would impact the economy and that Nixon would get reelected. The only time, and this is one thing you might give Jimmy Carter credit for, was when he hired Paul Volcker. Paul Volcker came to him and told him, well, the way we can end this inflation is we just ratchet interest rates up to 15, 16, 17, 18, unheard of levels. And he also explained that this is not going to be good for the economy. It's going to really cause pain. But on the other side of it, things should work out. And Jimmy Carter said, go ahead and do it. And no, first of all, the Fed's supposed to be independent. But Jimmy Carter apparently was in favor of that. And that, in many respects, I mean, he probably would have lost anyway because the economy wasn't doing well. But those interest rate hikes did not help in 1979. The economy still had the very high inflation, the very low growth rate, if any. The recession was going on, and he lost to Reagan in 1980. All right, mug stackers. Let's see what else we got. By the way, I want to thank the people who are ordering their precious metals through the Smaulgld links. I've through the SD Bullion, Golden Eagle Coin, Money Metals Exchange. And I've also had people who've told me that they've not ordered through the links, but have used those services. So I do want to thank the people that are using the links. If you're not using the links, it costs you no more, no less than if you visited those sites directly. Not investment advice to buy gold or silver. If you're going to do so, please help the site out because I don't have those nasty ads. This is all funded via your purchases of precious metals or supporting the other ads on the site. We have coffee for sale. We have emergency food. And also, obviously, if you can donate via the various methods, Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, PayPal, Subscribestar, Patreon, that's all appreciated. And also, I did get today, I'm not going to mention the person's name, but they did send me a nice little fiat currency. And they also sent me alternative currency. Let's see what it is. It is a Chuck E. Cheese token. I don't know what I'm going to do with that, but I think it's just an example of alternative currency. But it reminded me that at some point, I believe Chuck E. Cheese, all these companies, instead of having these tokens, they'll have digital tokens. All right, let's see. I think that's it on the markets. Let's move on to, remember, we're going to cover this Tether, this New York Bit license. I haven't forgotten about it. We'll get to that in a second. But let's talk about the Mueller report and what happened today. Very interesting. I thought this was, months ago, I said, Rosenstein, remember that plane ride he took with Trump? After it came out that Rosenstein, we already knew a couple of things. Rosenstein signed I think the final FISA warrant to spy on Trump. Okay? Then Jeff Sessions, I'm accused myself, appoints this guy as Deputy Attorney General. Who knows why? I think Sessions was compromised himself, was definitely not real. I think he joined the Trump campaign to keep an eye on him, knowing that he might get appointed to Attorney General. I'm recused myself because I dealt with Russians. Okay, so he appoints Rod Rosenstein, who just months earlier had signed off on a FISA warrant to spy on Trump. And we know that the FISA warrant appears obvious to most people who are paying attention that the FISA warrant was based on unverified, salacious information that was contained in the Russian-based Steele dossier that was sourced and paid for by Hillary Clinton. And he signed off on it. Okay? Then Rosenstein, as a deputy attorney general, becomes essentially the attorney general because I'm recused myself. Sessions is gone. So he writes a memo saying that Trump should fire Comey. Now, I think that was also a setup, because by firing Comey, now they can say he obstructed justice, even though Rosenstein said he should. Anyway, Rosenstein claims that Trump told him to write the memo. All right. But the thing about Rosenstein is he then appoints Robert Mueller as a special counsel. And he's conflicted because, first of all, why was there a need to hire Robert Mueller? Well, he's already conflicted. He signed the FISA warrant under what appears to be false pretenses. He's also recommended that James Comey be fired. And you look at him and say, well, what is this guy's purpose? Well, whose side is he on? I mean, he's conflicted in that he's actually a witness in the obstruction of justice charge because he wrote the memo to fire Comey, if that's a cause for obstruction of justice, which I don't think it is. And then also, how is he overseeing Mueller as the special counsel when he himself was involved in the investigation of Donald Trump's Russia collusion by signing a FISA warrant? Okay, then it comes out earlier this year that Rod Rosenstein had recommended, according to testimony by Page or Strzok or some of the people in the FBI, they volunteered to wear a wire to catch Trump and saying some type of off-the-wall, lost his marbles type stuff so they can try to get rid of him under the 25th Amendment. Now, you would think, hearing all this, Trump would want to fire him. Instead, supposedly he's summoned to the White House, and then Trump decides, no, I don't need to meet with him. I'll meet with him next week. In fact, best thing to do is I'll get on a plane with him. Now, you can see Rosenstein probably sweating that he's got to ride on the plane with Trump after hearing that Trump knows that he's made these comments that he wants to wear a wire on his boss to figure out how we can get rid of him. So that plane ride must have created a lot of sweating for Rosenstein. So at the time when that came out, I try not to look at everything in terms of the mafia, but we talked about that the other night in terms of the bankers wanting to get into cryptocurrency. But I thought this was an example of keep your friends close and your enemies closer. He figured he'd get Rosenstein on the plane and just bring him into the tent while making him sweat, knowing that he knows exactly what Rosenstein has done and exactly where Rosenstein is coming from. Well, Bob Barr does the same thing. Rosenstein's like, oh, okay, well, I'll just resign now. You got a new attorney general. See ya. And Bob Barr says, you know what, Rod, why don't you hang around a bit? You know, we might need your advice. I mean, you were involved in all this stuff. You can be really helpful. And Rosenstein's like, well, okay, I'll hang around. And by the way, when Rosenstein gets off the plane with Trump, Trump's like, yeah, great meeting, no problem. And Rosenstein was probably expecting to be fired during that, but Trump didn't fire him, kept him around. Bob Barr keeps him around. When Bob Barr gets the Mueller report and it does not make a determination on obstruction of justice, you say, hey, Bob, you've been working on this. What do you think? Obstruction of justice? And Rosenstein's like, well, no obstruction of justice. And Barr's like, that's right, no obstruction of justice. Good job, Rod. It's a good thing I kept you around. Yeah, why don't we have a press conference and we'll say that you and I, we sat down, we legalized over it, and we realized no obstruction of justice, right, Rod? And and no collusion either, right? And you signed that FISA warrant, didn't you, saying that maybe we need to look into this? And you could see Rod is in a very bad position because everyone else at least has been called out and fired and been disgraced. He's still sitting there in his position. And interesting today or yesterday, I don't know when it was. First time I saw this, I thought, why now, Rod? Why? What is the speech you're giving here? I said, curious timing of Rod's observation. Rosenstein slams Obama administration for choosing not to publicize full story of Russian hacking. He's out there now like, look, I didn't know anything about this stuff. This is Obama did all this. They were hacking and they didn't tell us. And yeah, when he was in the FBI, he signed the FISA warrant saying we got to go after Trump. So I think this is a case where Rod is on the inside now. Rod knows. They know everything about him. They know everything that happened. And they're keeping him around. They're keeping their enemies close. And Bob, they're probably making a deal with this guy because he knows everything. He was at the highest levels. And it seems to me that even Sessions, they were all involved in this, and Rosenstein was the guy who hired Mueller, and he signed the FISA warrant. He wrote the memo to fire Comey. He knows everything. So I think Bob Barr has kept him around, and if he wants to play, he's now in the big leagues here. And I think Rod Rosenstein will probably skate on all this, but I think he'll probably turn on just about everyone because I think he knows everything. Remember, he knew, in fact, he knew everything that Mueller was reporting on. He knew that Mueller was going to raid Roger Stone. He knew that he was going to raid Manafort's house. He knew he was going to raid Cohen. He knows all this stuff, and he also knows, so I'm not going to get into all the different things that happened, why a lot of these things were happening. He also knows there was probably no basis to ever even have this investigation in the first place. All right, let's move on to 2020. This is unbelievable. Now remember, we all like Bernie here. We love to hear him. We love to hear him talk. But he has a economic advisor. Her name is Stephanie Kelton, and she actually wrote this. This is her economic theory. She is one of these modern monetary theorists, modern monetary policy. I don't know. It just means you can just print money. It doesn't matter. She tweets this. The carpenter can never run out of inches. The stadium can't run out of points. The airline can't run out of frequent flyer miles. And the United States can't run out of dollars. Now, she believes this because whenever you criticize, when Bernie says, healthcare should be free, college should be free, everything should be free, those Franklin $50 that Lewis is trying to sell on a site, they should be free. He actually, it's very hard to have an intellectual underpinning to say everything should be free, because the question always comes, or the response always comes back, well, nothing is free, there's no such thing as a free lunch, who's going to pay for it? Well, he's aligned himself with these modern monetary theorists that believe, well, yeah, things can be free. Why? You just print up the money. And we got the dollar, so you can just print it up. Now, it sounds mindless. Well, it is mindless, but this is the theory that he's running on, and she's doubling down. She's put out a couple of tweets in the last couple of days. Here's another one that she said here. This is what she's reminding people of. And it never matters that the point is simply to remind people that money is no object, figuratively or literally, and that the relevant constraint is inflation. So basically, you can print whatever you want as long as you just don't create inflation. And I always point out the inflation risk, but that never matters. Drag me to Weimar, Zimbabwe, Venezuela. God bless Twitter. And she's being snarky here, saying, and all these people who criticize me, they say Weimar Republic, Zimbabwe, Venezuela. She's basically saying, give it a rest. You know, we can print, and we're not going to create inflation because we know what we're doing. And this is Bernie Sanders' economic policy woman, Stephanie Kelton. There she is. The big hope for 2020. All right, let's get into some crypto stories, and then I want to get into this BitLicense and what I think happened with the New York Attorney General and Bitfinex and Tether. So we talked about adoption. We've been talking about adoption all the time with the Bitcoin ETF, well, not Bitcoin ETF, the Bitcoin ATMs, Litecoin ATMs, and also what we see are not just large startups like Binance and Coinbase and Kraken and Poloniex having crypto trading, but we've noticed that companies like BAC, New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, all want to get into the trading of cryptocurrencies. We see Fidelity Digital Assets has already launched a platform, at least for institutional investors, to sell Bitcoin, Litecoin, and so on. Now, TDAmeritrade, through its RSX, they're probably going to do the same. And we're getting all these reports that now they're saying, the New York Times reporter is saying that eTrade is also preparing to do the same. And this will all probably happen in the next couple of months in the wake of TDAmeritrade quietly opening Bitcoin trading for some of its customers. I was just told, I don't know, it was told by sources say, who knows, that eTrade is preparing to begin offering both Bitcoin and Ether trading to its 5 million or so customers, and is just finalizing a third party to hold the coins. Yeah, I mean, if Coinbase can do it, and if Binance and all these startups can do it, why can't eTrade also do it? And we see TDAmeritrade, I think, has 12 million customers. Fidelity is the big one. Fidelity has even more customers. They've been at this, I reported 2 years ago, back in summer of 2017, Fidelity had already allowed customers to integrate on their dashboard, the Fidelity dashboard, the Coinbase, their Coinbase holdings. Now, you weren't allowed to trade from Fidelity into Coinbase, but you can easily flip into your Coinbase account directly from. It was an integration on Fidelity, and I predicted 2 years ago that Fidelity would probably get into this business, and they clearly are going to, and or they would buy Coinbase. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to happen because Coinbase probably will go public, but I think there was a period of time when TDAmeritrade, Charles Schwab, eTrade, Fidelity were all looking at either acquiring a crypto trading platform or developing themselves. It looks like they're probably going to go out not by acquisition, by developing their own crypto trading platforms. And of course, that's big adoption. A lot of people don't like to use these crypto platforms. They hear about the hacks all the time. I'm sure that that'll be less of an issue at these larger, more heavily funded. They've got huge tech budgets, very big on security. There's probably much better equipped to handle the type of security and the type of compliance. Also, here's the TDAmeritrade. We mentioned this. This is just another story. $1 trillion brokerage giant TDAmeritrade is quietly testing Bitcoin and Litecoin. Now, Fidelity is even bigger than both of those combined, and we'll just see what the impact is. And it says could open the floodgates to institutional adoption of Bitcoin. I actually think it will also open the floodgates to retail investors, because a lot of retail investors, they don't want to start a new account at Coinbase or Kraken or Poloniex. But if they already have a Fidelity account, a TDAmeritrade account or eTrade account, and there's the ability to buy Bitcoin, Litecoin, or Ethereum or any of those, they might take a flyer on them. Interesting. We always talk about ATMs. Tehran gets its first Bitcoin ATM. Very interesting. I was just checking the numbers. In the last couple of days, there's been a huge increase. About 30 or 40 Bitcoin ATMs added globally. Moving towards 5,000 global ATMs, and already over 3,000 of those are in the United States. And about 3,000 worldwide carry Litecoin, which is interesting. That's the second most used cryptocurrency in cryptocurrency ATMs. All right, now let's get into. Oh no, we still got some prices here. I'm gonna skip that. People always making price predictions. All right, let's get into this Tether story. I've got a different take on all this, what's happening. Okay. So everyone is talking about the Tether issue with Bitfinex. And I did a story on this over a year ago. It's a YouTube. I think it was called the Tether issue. I don't know what it was called. Doesn't matter. But in that, nothing has changed. The issue has always been with Tether and Bitfinex. There's been issues or questions. That Tether is supposedly a stable coin that is backed on a one-for-one basis of US dollars, but it is a cryptocurrency or a token. And the idea is that if you're trading on the Bitfinex platform and you cash out your Bitcoin, you don't want to move into fiat and then send it to your bank account and then send it back from the bank account back to Bitfinex so you can trade, what you do is you sell your Bitcoin or your Litecoin and you hold it in a stable coin called Tether. But there's always been concerns about the cozy relationship between Tether and Bitfinex. They appear to have the same owners. I'm not going to get into all the details. There was a lot of sleuthing going on, but the net result was there was concern that Tether was not backed one-to-one, that there was no way they had $400 billion or 300, whatever the number is, the ridiculous numbers that supposedly were supposed to back these Tether items. And I think it's 800 million. It went from 400 million to 800 million. And people just thought there's no way that there's a bank account sitting around that has that kind of money. Well, as it turns out, as a result of this scandal, where the New York Attorney General came out and said that Bitfinex and Tether, she did expose the cozy relationship between Bitfinex and Tether, in that Bitfinex had a shortfall in customer money, and they raided the Tether funds in order to make good some of their obligations, and then they send some of that money to a payment processor, and that money they don't have access to. It's not worth getting into the details. What's interesting is this whole thing exposed that there actually was all of the money was at Tether. The scam of it is not that the money wasn't at Tether, but that Tether and Bitfinex are so tightly related that Bitfinex can go in and raid the Tether money. And now they took the money out of Tether, and then they took the money and they sent it to a third party. Now they can't get that back. But that's not what I'm interested in. I think Tether is the Mt. Gox of stable coins. And, one day, there's already other stable coins. We now have Coinbase as a stable coin. Gemini, the Winklevoss twins, have a stable coin. Goldman Sachs backed Circle through Poloniex as a stable. They all have stable coins. Tether is not now the only coin that people rely on to move in and out of their trades. And JP Morgan will have a stable coin. All trading platforms will have their own stable coin. So Tether is no longer a unique stable coin. Now, but here's the very interesting point on Bitfinex and Tether. So there was a woman, her name is Caitlin Long, and she wrote a very nice 7 or 8 tweet thread where she was saying, hey, New York Attorney General, what's going on? We have these Wall Street companies all the time. They've done this. I don't know if it was JP Morgan. There was some big bank she mentioned had done something very similar. They pulled money out of one account and they left their customers supposedly naked because the money wasn't there, and then they moved it back and all that, and nothing happened to them. And she's saying, why, the double standard? Well, I don't think that's what it's a double standard, but here's what I think has happened. I say it makes perfect sense. The New York State Attorney General is not going to go after Wall Street companies. Why? Because remember, if you're in New York and you're in the politics, you get campaign donations from the big banks, the too big to fail banks. And recently we saw the Winklevoss twins, Gemini, donated to Andrew Cuomo's gubernatorial election. So there's money involved. They're not going to go after their own. They go after Wall Street competitors. Now, here's an interesting point. This Bitfinex company, did a little digging here, which is the original. See, I don't just parrot the crap that these other channels do. I actually look at things from my own perspective, and I'll do research. Back in 2015, Bitfinex issued a press release. Due to financial regulation changes in the state of New York, certain Bitfinex services are no longer available to New York residents. Why? It says Bitfinex is not applying for a Bit license at this time. Well, they don't have a Bit license. Now, first of all, Bitfinex is located in Hong Kong. Now, why would the New York Attorney General waste their time going after Bitfinex? Is it really because there's a few hundred customers, even a few thousand customers that might be in New York that might have a problem with Bitfinex? No. My view is they're trying to protect their Wall Street companies. Tether competes with, remember Tether is Bitfinex, Goldman Sachs backed Circle, US dollar coin, and New York Bit license holders, Gemini, the Winklevoss twins, they have a Bit license. They have a stable coin, Gemini dollar. Coinbase has a Bit license. They have a US dollar coin. So I don't think this had anything to do with consumer protection. I think this had to do with protecting Bit licensees. Now, who else has a Bit license? Well, the first one that got it was Paxos Trust or ItBit. And then Gemini, the Winklevoss twins, got one. Ripple has a Bit license. Coinbase has a Bit license. Tokyo's Bitflyer has a Bit license. Another Hong Kong company called AXAPO has one. And Jack Dorsey's Square has a Bit license. Jack Dorsey Square sells Bitcoin directly from the Square app. But Bitfinex doesn't have a Bit license. Interesting. Also, CoinSource, an operator of Bitcoin teller machines, they have a Bit license. And Robinhood Markets, the Robinhood app, has a Bit license. And Moon, we talked about them. They allow you to buy different products through the Lightning Network. They have a Bit license, and LibertyX also has a Bit license. So the bit license appears to be the big players, Coinbase, Goldman Sachs backed, Poloniex, Gemini, they have bit licenses. And guess who doesn't? Bitfinex. All right, so that made perfect sense to me. Let's see what else I have here. Keep saying I'm pulling up the same thing there. I want to pull up a different thing. I don't want to give you the same. What's this one say? Oh, it's the same thing again. What's going on? All right, so I say here to Caitlin, may I suggest that nailing Tether paves the way for Wall Street-backed Circles, partially owned by Goldman Sachs, owned stablecoin. Also, who else did we hear the other day is applying for a bit license? Bakkt. Bakkt was in the news the other day. Sources say they thought one of the best ways they can help with their CFTC compliance was to get themselves a bit license. And if you remember what Bakkt is backed by the New York Stock Exchange, Microsoft, Starbucks, and the Boston Consulting Group, and they want to sell Bitcoin physically delivered delivered futures contracts. So it seems to me that this is, and I can't prove intent, I can only show who's got the license, who wants the license, and who doesn't have the license. And, Goldman Sachs has its own stablecoin. So here is Caitlin Long's point. New York did good investigative work, coming up with this Bitfinex Tether connection, but needs to be called to task as to why the double standard and why the gotcha approach. Why not do the same to Wall Street firms when they pay similar shell games? I say, how naive, Caitlin Long, because Wall Street firms are their shell games, and Bitfinex from Hong Kong without a bit license is not their shell game. So that's why this isn't a matter of justice or injustice, gotcha or didn't gotcha. It's a matter of who's your buddy. And Bitfinex said, we're not getting one of these New York licenses, these bit licenses. And again, also interesting, it seems because of the charges against Bitfinex, we actually learned the issue was not Tether not having the dollars to back it. There seems to be hundreds of millions of dollars that Tether had and that Bitfinex was able to raid. It was Bitfinex raiding those dollars. Now that also shows us that the problem with cryptocurrencies being backed, you're in the same situation where you have to trust the third party to actually back the coin. All these people, they'll just back a cryptocurrency with gold and then it's lights out for Bitcoin. No, it's not. And you can buy gold today. You don't need it to be on a blockchain. You don't need it to be backed. In fact, who knows? There's no way you can actually. The custody issue is always going to be an issue. And the reason that Bitcoin and Litecoin and unbacked cryptocurrencies do better, and counterintuitively, is that there's nothing to raid. There's no situs. There's no place where they all exist. And you don't have to rely on a third party. All right, so I think that's it on the TED. Now, I did want to talk about, don't go away yet, because we want to talk about Donald Trump and his calling out of the things that have happened over the last few years as being a coup against him. He's using those terms. I just want to play you a couple of clips, then we're going to get to your comments on this Bitfinex Tether bit license analysis that we did. So today, well, first let's start with last night. Trump gave an exclusive interview to Sean Hannity, and he was asked about this concept that it just come out that Strzok and Page, the two FBI people very high up in the FBI, they had an email released or a text message released where the two of them were talking, and Strzok says to his girlfriend Page, talking with Bill, do we want Joe to go with Evanina instead of Charlie for a variety of reasons? And Page writes back, not sure. Would it be unusual to have this person show up again? Maybe another agent from the same team. So far, nothing there. Then Strzok says, or maybe he's the counterintelligence guy. Same might make sense. He can assess if there are any news, questions, or different demeanor. Now, what does that mean, different demeanor? The date of this particular text message is on, it's at some point in November of 2016. I think it's November 17th. 2016. Now, why would Strzok want to know from Page and put somebody at the meeting to find out at the president's transitional meetings whether there's some type of change of demeanor? Well, the guy's name was Rogers. He was part of the National Security Intelligence Committee working for the Obama administration, and he actually went to the Trump campaign around the same time to warn them that there had been surveillance on the Trump transition team. And what looks like Strzok is saying here to Page is, we want to see if they understand something's up, like what's going on. And shortly after that, that's when Trump moved the transition team from the White House to, where did he move it from? He moved it over to West Bedminster, New Jersey, so they couldn't be surveilled, because Rogers gave him the heads up. Then he says, if Katie's husband is there, he can see if there are people we can develop for potential relationships, meaning part of the insurance plan. If Hillary lost, they would then try to remove Trump by placing people within the Trump transition team and get some inside information. Now, here's the interesting thing. Who's Katie's husband? Katie, they think, means Katie Seaman, who worked directly for Strzok, whose husband was Josh Pitcock, who was set to be the Vice President Pence's chief of staff. Very interesting. So they're looking to try to infiltrate the Trump team. They also know that Vice Admiral, I think is Rogers, has tipped off the Trump team, so they need to get somebody in there to find out what the heck is going on in the Trump team, and to see if they can get people in there who they can develop for potential relationships, i.e., see if they can get spies in the transition team to report back to them. It's just unbelievable. So Trump learns about this yesterday like the rest of the world, and Hannity asks him, what do you think about this? And here's what Trump had to say.
I just heard it a little while ago, and frankly, it's very disconcerting. If you look at what's been happening, they were the same two, the two lovers that decided to use the FBI server instead of their private, so they didn't get caught. These two were beauties. There's no doubt about it. They were going hog wild to find something about the administration, which obviously wasn't there. We have nothing to do with Russia, except that we've been tougher on Russia than any administration in 50 years, a lot tougher than Obama. But these were the two that talked about the insurance policy, just in case Hillary Clinton loses. If she loses, we've got an insurance policy. Well, that was the insurance policy. Now she lost, and now they're trying to infiltrate the administration to really, it's a coup, it's spying, it's everything that you can imagine. It's hard to believe in this country that we would have had that. I don't know if you remember a long time.
All right, so there you go. He's calling it a coup to Sean Hannity last night. Then today he goes to the NRA and he gives a speech. And listen to what he says to the NRA.
You've been looking at things that you wouldn't have believed possible in our country. Corruption at the highest level, a disgrace. Spying, surveillance, trying for an overthrow. And we caught him. We caught him.
Okay, so he's calling an overthrow there and a coup in the other. All right, well, let me know what you guys think. We're going to go over now to the comments. What I should have done, I'll play it anyway, before I played the Bernie Sanders his chief accountant or financial. Well, I lost it. I was going to play. Uh-oh, we got a moron here. But actually, that's what it was. Okay, let's see what you guys are saying in the comments. Remember, I only can look at comments that have Smaulgld in them. Otherwise, it's hard for me to see. All right, let's see what we got here. Philip and Ann and Mark and... the full crew is here. I don't see Pablo. Maybe he's over at Wall Street for Main Street. Let's see. Jack is here. Coins AZ is here. Philip And Jason's a good guy, knows his stuff. Lou is smart, makes me laugh. He also has the best regulars. All right. Check. Let's see. Fiona Whalen, Smaulgld, her name is Svetlana Nabiullina. There you go. Thank you for that. That is the Russian central bank head. She's actually Janet Yellen's, or was Janet Yellen's counterpart. Highly accommodative monetary policy. The committee would like to... Elvira Nabiullina, not Svetlana. Yeah, Elvira. That I knew. Not Svetlana. Svetlana is a very common Russian name. All right. Anything else here? No, we don't anymore. Okay, Seth Shepard. Anyone drinking beer from a Smaulgld stein? Yes, by the way, if you don't, a lot of you have purchased, I think most people on here probably already have a Smaulgld mug, maybe even two. But some have coffee mugs, some have beer steins. Remember, you can always get the Smaulgld beer steins, Smaulgld frosted beer mugs over at the Smaulgld shop. All the links are below the BitChute and the YouTube. They're on the Smaulgld site. So head on over there and get your Smaulgld mugs. If you want a note from me and a Smaulgld Game Changer Eraser, and you want the Smaulgld Classic and Super Classic mug, they only get shipped from Smaulgld headquarters. I ship those out myself, priority mail, 2-day shipping with receipt, with insurance. They're $23.99 and $19.99 for each of those mugs. Or you can join the Smaulgld mug clubs over on Patreon or Subscribestar, and you get those mugs included in your first month subscription. Otherwise, all the other mugs, pet bowls, t-shirts, hats, everything else, they're available on the Zazzle site. They take a little longer to deliver, but it's a good service. We've had dozens and dozens of orders through that. And also a reminder to order your precious metals through the Smaulgld site. Remember, I don't complain about not being monetized because we don't have monetization on there anyway. All right. Beer is starting to sound good, says Seth. But you need that Smaulgld mug. Okay, Ann says, Tether's causing a crash. I hope it doesn't last long. Well, I didn't get into that portion of it. I don't think it has any impact whatsoever. It is an exchange that's looks like some shady dealings. It did expose that at least the stablecoin Tether had the money back behind it. But I think it does tie into what I talked about. It's an effort to discredit Bitfinex. And it's succeeded. But it doesn't discredit the entire space. In fact, it makes people feel more comfortable that they're trading with companies that have bit licenses, or if it's Fidelity or TDAmeritrade. Then don't deal with this nonsense out of Hong Kong and Tether and all this. They've exposed that. And now they're saying, come on board with Coinbase, come on board with Circle, come on board with Square. Get your cryptocurrencies through these legitimate means. Don't do this Bitfinex. It almost sounds like Bitconnect. Remember that? He's not a scam. He's Bitconnect. What did he say? He used to say something. He had like a little stutter. I don't remember it. Bitconnect. He's not a scam. All right. Philip Quinn says, sound like some cronyism going on. That is what I am suspecting is happening. Ann Holland, look at the growth going on. I agree with Smaulgld. It's most likely the next bubble. And we talked about that the other night, that bankers need another bubble when crypto seems to be on its way. All right. I think that's it. Yep, that is it. A lot of comments there, so I do want to thank you all for joining me tonight. And tomorrow night is Saturday night. Silver with Smaulgld. I don't think I'll have a guest. I might. I'm not looking for one, but if someone comes along, I may have that person join me. Otherwise, I'll come up with something for tomorrow about silver, and we'll leave the crypto and the Mueller report and the Bitcoin and the Litecoin and the Federal Reserve and Janet Yellen behind, and we'll just talk about silver. So please make sure you join me. By the way, if you haven't just subscribed to this channel, it's very easy to do. Just hit the button. Please do so. And also subscribe to Smaulgld.com. I'm thinking at some point I'm going to, because I'm not going to grow. The channel doesn't look like it's ever going to grow to the levels of some of these other pumper channels. I've just taken the whole thing private, and I think if you're on the Smaulgld website and I have your email address, then it'll be much easier to set something up. But this is a small group, and it's very easy to do. There's really no point in using all this YouTube stuff if we have a small group and I can keep everyone on a private platform. And then maybe we can even occasionally swear. That's the main thing I really want to do. Only kidding. But, you just have more leeway if you have a private group. And, if you guys are all there, then we can just start that way. Because too many issues. I don't have that many issues with this. But I'd rather not be on the YouTube platform if I could keep the majority of us elsewhere. All right, thank you very much, and we will see you tomorrow for Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld. Good night. Yes, and remember, I am pumping mugs heavily, so if anyone wants to buy a mug, I will ship it out tomorrow morning, and you will get it probably Monday or Tuesday. So please go to smaulgld.com and get your mugs, make your donations, or buy your precious metals. Good night.